Hi, everyone. This is Barb Bruno, and this is a recorded session. And the reason I decided to record this is you could watch this when it's most convenient for you. But before I actually get into the presentation, I wanted to share something that I've been saying to staffing leaders across the country. Right now, in our industry and in our profession, why is it that some firms are really struggling while others are absolutely killing it? They're absolutely flourishing. What I'm about to walk you through today is not theory, and it's not just my opinion. My insights are based on three powerful resources. Number one, and first, is LinkedIn's big data, which is giving us very clear signals about how hiring, candidate behavior, and client expectations are changing. Second, this comes from working directly with some of the top performing staffing and recruiting firms and staffing solution firms, not only in the United States, but abroad, helping them adjust their strategies so they continue to scale and grow, even in a rapidly changing market. And third is what I've experienced personally in 2025. What I did last year is I spoke to more than 20 audiences made up of your clients, hiring managers and executives across multiple industries. And I made a conscious decision to do this last year. I just decided that I could do more for you and I if I got in front of our end users. And so I went in front of all of these audiences from every type of industry, and I had the opportunity to hear directly from them about what they value in recruiting partners and where they felt that most firms are falling short. And so, what I would do before I would start training, I always ask them one very simple question: what separates the staffing and recruiting firms that you value from the ones that you ignore? And I found their answers fascinating. Not one person said technology. Not one person said the cost of the services. And yet, so many of you feel you've got to reduce your margins, you've got to reduce your fees in order to get business. No, you don't. Not one person even mentioned AI. And that sort of surprised me. I expected that to come up. But what they did talk about instead was something very different. They talked about recruiters who called them that were prepared. They understood their business. They had done their homework. They asked better questions, and they positioned themselves as trusted advisors and more consultative instead of just a transactional vendor. Because most of them view you and I as a transactional vendor. They think we're all alike. And if all you're doing is filling jobs, that's all they view you as. They don't view you as a workplace expert. You're just someone that fills job, and you're very transactional about it. They clump you with everybody else. That conversation confirms something I've been seeing across the industry and across the country. Recruiting has changed more in the last 3 years than in the previous 30. And the firms that are adapting to that change are growing and scaling while others are struggling. And so, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you what those firms are doing differently so you can do the same. And what I've also realized is the gap is widening between the firms that are struggling and the firms that are flourishing. Like the flourishing firms, I had training clients last year that almost doubled their sales, while I would get calls from some firms that said, we're doing 30% of what we did the year before. And it's because these flourishing firms have learned a couple things. Number one, they've learned to adapt much faster. They're making changes faster. They're executing cleaner, and they're training smarter. They're just staying ahead of that learning curve. And I'm going to share 5 takeaways today that flourishing firms know and what they do differently so you can adapt these things to your firm and also have those same results. You can't do things the same way and expect different results. You've got to change things. And just between you and I, if you've not changed the way you're operating your business or the way that you're recruiting or salespeople are working their desk in the last 6 to 12 months, your processes are probably outdated just because the marketplace has changed that much. And the number one takeaway that you could take from these flourishing firms is their mindset. Their mindset is very different. They never want to just survive. Their mindset going into the marketplace is they're going to flourish, and they're going to do everything they can to flourish. And they don't wait for clarity, they create it. They don't wait to see what other firms are doing. They're the ones that are leading some of the changes that are going on. They're asking better questions. They're strategically positioning themselves as a sounding board. They're positioning themselves as a workplace expert. And so again, their clients are talking to them. They view them much differently than just somebody who fills jobs. Now, we fill jobs. I mean, that's what we do for a living. But they view us, they elevate. They elevate the relationship when they view you as more consultative. There's also two perceptions that are quietly costing recruiting firms millions of dollars. And I hear this all the time. Clients feel like a source of revenue, and candidates don't think we care about them. Candidates are convinced all we care about is filling a job. And clients absolutely feel like a source of revenue. And I heard this over and over and over again. And let me say something to you. If your conversations only happen around open roles, if the only time you talk to your clients is when you're working on an active job, you're proving them right. And if candidates hear job pitches before you understand their goals, you intentionally have reinforced both of these beliefs, both of these perceptions that are costing you so much money. And the firms that are flourishing understand this. They understand that this is the perception out there. And so they address it right up front. And they do talk to their clients when they're not working on an active, a job order or contract or temp assignment. They're providing information. They're positioning themselves much differently. They're having much different conversations with individuals. Recruiting has changed more dramatically in the past year than in the past 10 years. I've never seen things change as fast as they did last year. The first 2 quarters of last year were much different than the last 2 quarters of last year. And I can tell you the firms that adapted the changes that I was training on, it was interesting because a lot of them struggled up until June. And then all of a sudden they positioned themselves more consultative. And all of a sudden they started seeing different results. Because again, what worked even 6 months ago may not be effective today because of what's going on. So let's talk about the critical shift that they made. They now position themselves as strategic partners, helping clients achieve business outcomes and KPIs, not just filling jobs. And so I want you to ask yourself a couple questions, okay? What KPIs do your hiring managers have to hit? And what business outcome is going to be impacted by the hiring they're doing through you? Because these are the questions we have to ask them. What business outcome are you trying to achieve by this hire? How is this hire going to affect the KPIs you need to hit as a hiring manager? We've got to start, again, understanding what these people are trying to achieve, because then we can help them do it. And with candidates, these firms have become lifetime career agents. They're focused on advancing careers. They never pitch a job. They never open a conversation pitching a job. They would never send an email pitching a job. Now, does it work sometimes? Yes, it does. But in-mail open rates are under 10% right now. Email open rates are under 7% right now. So if you're relying on email for your communication, got to change that. The funnel to the money is still the phone. And people are saying no one will talk to you on the phone. You know why? Because you convinced yourself they won't. They won't talk to you if they don't think you can benefit them. If they see how you can benefit them, of course they're going to talk to you on the phone. It's all a matter of perception and how you're positioning yourself. But the big critical shift is you've got to position yourself. You've got to start talking about what business outcomes are you trying to achieve and show them that you can help them do that. If you position yourself like this, much more consultative, they will take you wherever they go, because our hiring managers are changing jobs, quicker than they ever did in the past. And you want them to take you with them. And you don't want to be put in that clump of only filling jobs. That's what they refer to us as you people. You people are all alike. No, you're not. Not if you're a strategic partner and someone else is just filling open requisitions. You're much different. Flourishing firms don't wait. They run much tighter cycles. They ask themselves constantly, what's changing? What are we seeing out there? You are on the firing line. You can pick up changes even before, LinkedIn does. I mean, LinkedIn's basing it on data, but you've got real-time interaction with hiring authorities and candidates every day. What's changing and what are you doing about it this week? And what are you stopping that's not working? If you're in leadership of a firm, you've got to ask yourself these 3 questions constantly. What's changing? What are we doing about it? What am I having my team do about the changes? And then what do we need to stop doing that's not effective? It kills me when I do in-house training and I will ask an owner, well, is this working? Well, no, they just have to make more calls. No, they don't have to make more calls. They have to change the calls they're making. It's never do more of what's not working. It's look at what's not working and change it and stop doing the things that are ineffective. Flourishing firms always weekly are asking themselves these things. And you in leadership, any of you in leadership or management, you've got to ask yourself these things constantly. They don't pivot once a year. They adjust weekly based on data and conversations and outcomes. Your team are on the firing line. They can give you information that is invaluable in you knowing where to focus your efforts and what changes to make. We're out there talking to people every single day. And all this data so often is just lost because it's not being shared and not being active on. So what do firms that are flourishing do differently? They also require their teams to conduct a weekly performance review. Every week, top performers ask themselves 3 questions. What did I do right this week? What's the 20% of what I did this week that gave me 80% of my results? Because I want to do more of that next week. Whatever is successful for me. This is going to be different for each person that works for you. And what I would say to all of you is when you get off this training, have all of your people put 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, a weekly review. And you might do it as a group initially, but this is a great thing for a virtual team. This is a great thing for any type of work arrangement. The second question you're asking is, how do I waste time? This identifies the activities that produce little or no return. And if you stop doing the things that are wasting your time, you have more time to do the 20% that's giving you 80% of your results. And then what new skill am I intentionally developing this month? Your team should be developing a new skill every month. Every month, they should be working on one skill set that is going to make them more effective and give them better results. Everyone experiences an occasional slow week. We just do. But in high performance firms, a slow week never turns into a slow month or a slump, because every Friday their team is pausing and evaluating their actions and adjusting their behavior. Flourishing firms don't wait for results to improve. They constantly refine the actions they're taking to produce them. If you don't like your results, you can't keep doing things the same way and try to change the results. You've got to change the decisions you're making and the actions you're taking if you want to get different results. So you don't like your results, go backward and go, okay, so what decisions am I making? What actions am I taking to get my current results? I got to make different decisions and take different actions if I want better results. Action item number 1 is implement the weekly review process company-wide. If you do nothing else as a result of this, this will change things, because it's going to make your people stand back. It's almost like they're standing back and acting like a consultant, looking at what they did for the week and being very objective. And this is just a great way this eliminates slumps. It absolutely eliminates slumps. Takeaway number 2 from the flourishing firms is their culture. Their culture is just different. And I don't care if they're working remote or if they're on site. The culture of flourishing firms are different. In flourishing firms, training isn't an event. It's a performance system that creates a culture of professional and personal growth. I hear owners and managers tell me all the time, I just can't attract or keep people. It's so hard to find people that are good in the staffing and recruiting profession. And what I'm telling you is people that work in our profession are no different than the candidates that we represent. They want to have professional and personal growth. They're looking for that. If you become a company that gives them personal and professional growth, you're going to hire better and they're not going to leave you. Flourishing firms also don't treat training like a calendar item. They treat it like a revenue generator, because that's what training does. If you have proper training, if you implement what I'm training you on today, there's no power, by the way, in training. I mean, and that probably sounds silly coming from me because I'm a trainer, but there's no power in what I do. It's what do you do with the information that I'm giving you? Because if you listen to what I'm telling you to do, you will increase revenue and you will increase your income. And that's why I train. I train so all of you can be more successful, that your businesses can scale, that everybody working for you makes more money. A market that changes monthly requires skills that improve weekly. And so think about micro learning, short current training in small pieces. If you try to train too much over the long duration of time, even this call is going to go a little long today. This call that I'm doing right now is going to be a little longer, but I'm really encouraging all of you to stay to the very end. Stay to the very end of this call because it'll be worth your time. I guarantee it'll be worth your time. And the reason I'm taking a little bit longer is I feel this is one of the most important webinars I've done in a long time, because I see too many people struggling right now. And I have the answers that can make you stop struggling and that can make you successful. And that's why I put this program together. Also, you've got to do role-based skill focus. Recruiters don't need generic motivation. They need, how do you outreach? How do you develop rapport with candidates? How do you become more consultative? How do you really partner with clients? They need to change up their scripts and their approach. And you've got to practice. It can't just be content that they're giving you. I believe in role playing. And when people say, I role play when I do speaking engagements, and people say, I don't like to role play. I go, good, then we're going to role practice. We're not going to role play. They've got to practice what they do. And I can tell you right now that your people probably are very bad at overcoming objections, because I've done 7 conferences this year so far. And at all 7, I had the audience stand up and I was doing overcoming objections. And by the second objection, I had the whole audience sitting down. And the owners are just sitting there shaking their heads. Teach your people how to overcome objections. You know, they're getting off the calls way too quickly. When they get an objection, they should overcome 3 objections with every call. That's kind of a bonus little tip here. I guarantee you, your people are not good at overcoming objections, and you've got to help them. You've got to role play how to overcome objections. Now, a common mistake in firms that are not flourishing, and I see this all the time when firms call me and say they're struggling, they spend far more on technology and tools than they do on consistently developing the skills of their recruiters. Now, it's good for you to have all those tools, but the tools don't produce revenue. Skilled recruiters do. And flourishing firms know the difference. You can have all the resources in the world, but if you don't have the people that know how to work the resources, it's not going to increase your sales and profits. Action item number 2, I would challenge all of you to just identify one problem area that needs the most improvement and implement training to provide better results. Stand back from your company and pretend you're a consultant and look at your company. What is the one problem area that really needs the most improvement? And you know, if you did something about it, you will get much better results. That's where you've got to go first. That's where you've got to go first. Number 3 takeaways, you've got to know stats and ratios. It kills me when I am at a conference and I ask people what their individual ratios are and they look at me like deer in headlights. We are in a sales profession. A sales profession is a numbers profession. If the people that work for you don't know their individual ratios, they have no idea what they have to achieve every day. They have no idea what to do every day because they don't know their numbers. Once somebody has been with you 6 months, you should give them, the KPIs you want them to hit, but also give them their individual ratios so they know exactly what they have to do every day. It takes the mystery out of being a consistent producer. So you can't only just know the ratios and stats, you've got to share them with them and show them how you break it down into the activity level that they need to achieve every single day. Flourishing firms also know the income goal of every employee. They know what they want to earn. And when they're training, when they're mentoring, when they're holding people accountable, they say to them, I know you want to earn 85 grand this year. And if you do these following things, you're going to do that. You're going to be on target to hit that. They share daily results needed to consistently attain or surpass goals. Somebody may have to book, 6 first interviews before they get a placement or a fill. Somebody else might have to only book 3 because they have more experience. They know, who to send out. You've got to know those numbers so people realize what kind of activity level they need to consistently hit or surpass goals. And by the way, if somebody doesn't attain the goals, I'm recording this call at the beginning of March. And if your people didn't attain their goal in January and February, take the difference between what they said they were going to do and what they actually did and add it to the remaining 10 months of the year. Divide it by 10 and add it to March through December. You never erase a goal. If the day you erase a goal, you're telling your people that the goals aren't real. I want to share some of the standards of flourishing firms. They offer consistent upgraded training to reflect changes in the market. They continually upgrade their client base. They are always marketing. Even if they have too many orders to work, they're always looking for the better clients to represent. They identify new resources for talent. And these are not paid resources. If you just merely ask candidates, where do you go when you're looking for a job, you'll identify new resources. They all have strong client and candidate referral programs. 40% minimum, 40% of your new clients and your new candidates should be referred. Think about how much easier client development would be if 40% of your new clients came from your current clients. They were referred. And they hold people accountable. I have owners tell me all the time, I can't hold people accountable. Of course you can. It's your business. You've got to hold people accountable because if they don't hit their income goals, they're certainly going to blame you. And so the flourishing firms hold people accountable. I want to give you an example. Instead of just telling somebody make more calls, and I hear owners say this often, well, make more calls. Your call is horrible, but make more of them. No, you want to improve the messaging quality. You want to follow up better. You want to, have referral prompts. How can you ask for referrals throughout your presentations? And instead of selling harder, it becomes ask smarter questions that uncover business drivers, desired outcomes, and urgency. We've got to start sounding different. We've got to elevate. We've got to elevate what we're doing because that's what companies want. There is so much hiring going on right now. You're just not positioning yourself to get it. My 4th takeaway is you've got to lead versus manage. There is such a difference between leadership and management. Leaders have followers, managers have subordinates. And execution is a leadership habit, not a staff problem. You know, if you feel yourself saying, I can't hold people accountable, then, you know, execution is not at the top of your list, and it needs to be. It needs to be. Flourishing firms consistently update processes to reflect changes in the market and inspire others to achieve greater levels of success for their reasons. You've got to know what your people are trying to accomplish. Because if you don't know what they're trying to accomplish, you can't help them do it. And if you know their income goal, everything is saying, I want you to earn the money you want to earn. This is what you have to do. And when you know their stats and ratios, you can tell them exactly what they need to do to hit their goals consistently. Habit number one is owners of flourishing firms really look at priorities. They define one or two priorities that directly impact improve results, and they share it with their team. They're always looking at how can we improve results? How can we improve results? Habit number two is they have everybody list 6 priorities closest to the money daily and plan all their outgoing calls. If your people that arrive at work and they don't have their calls planned, they're going to wipe out 90 minutes in the first 90 minutes of the day are done because they don't know who they're going to call. And then you know what happens? Your team gets controlled by the incoming calls, not their planned outgoing calls. And you never want that. Those incoming calls often reflect other people's priorities. You want everybody's destiny controlled by their planned outgoing calls, not the incoming calls. Habit number 3 is debriefs and feedback loops. When something happens, you know, a fall off, a counter offer accepted, ghosting, no showing, we have a tendency of blaming others rather than taking accountability. Flourishing firms don't do that. They never point the finger at something else. They realize when they're blaming, when they're pointing the finger at the economy, their location, their niche or whatever, you know, they're blaming, you know, irresponsible millennials for everything. They realize 3 fingers are pointing back at them. So they always ask themselves, what could I do different to change the results? What could I do different to change the results? They always take, you know, and so they're good. When something happens, they're going to say, okay, what did we learn here? And what are we going to change next time? Because we don't want this to happen again. Rather than just saying, well, you know, offer turndowns are just what's happening out there. No. When you have that happen, you go back and you dissect it and you figure out why did it happen. And habit number 4 is a leadership modeling. The team follows what the leadership does, not what leadership says. People always remember how you made them feel, and they always watch what you do. If leadership is learning and practicing and adapting, the team will do the same. The team will do the same. They're watching you. They're taking their direction from you. That's why you've always got to be the same person if you're in leadership. They should never have to guess which version of you is showing up. Not fair to them, not fair to your business. Because this is so critically important. You can see some of these are major shifts in mindset. The positioning yourself as a consultant, not just somebody who fills jobs. That's a major change. But a lot of the rest of this is easy to implement. And so I would suggest under action item number 3, I've listed 4 things because I do think you've got to look at weekly priorities. As you've got to always, you know, proactively get out there in front of what's going on, but have all your team. This is a game changer. Number 2 is a game changer. If everybody that works for you lists 6 priorities closest to the money every night before they leave work and plan their outgoing calls, everybody's life is going to change. They're all going to be more successful. And this is a training moment for you, because when you look at their 6 priorities closest to the money, you're going to be shocked at what they think is closest to the money. So often it's busy work. It's not results-oriented work. It's a great training opportunity for you to know that your people are going to wipe out a whole day. Because if you look at their 6 priorities and you know that's not where they should focus, you can tell them before they waste an entire day. The debrief and feedback loops, these are all learning opportunities for you. And remember, they're watching you. You've got to be that leader that is doing, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. A number 5 takeaway or next steps. What I want you to figure out right now is, are you positioned to respond to change and sustain growth? Because the flourishing firms do this. They are always responding to change. They're responding rapidly so that they can sustain growth. So what I would like you to do now is I want you to just grab a pen and a piece of paper if you can. So just reach and find a pen and a piece of paper real quick, because I want you to answer yes or no to the following 5 questions, okay? Do you make adjustments weekly based on outcomes, not opinions? Nobody cares about our opinion. Nobody cares what we want or what we do. They just care about themselves. So when you're making adjustments, are you basing it on outcomes or lack of outcomes? Yes or no, right? Yes or no down. Is training consistent, role-based, and tied to metrics? So are you consistently providing training, role-based and tied to metrics. Can you implement a new behavior within 72 hours? If you see something not working, do you have the bandwidth to basically implement a new behavior in 72 hours? Yes or no? Number 4, do leaders measure execution and coach to it? Yes or no? And are you actively stopping what no longer works? You, at the end of every week, look at, this isn't working, we got to stop it. Because this is what the firms that flourish do. Now, if you've got 4 to 5 yeses, you're positioned to flourish. And congratulations, you're doing a great job. 0 to 3 yeses, you're not failing, but you're operating without a modern execution system, because you've got to be doing all of these. And by the way, this call is recorded. You're going to have the PowerPoint presentation to go through so you can write all this down, because all of this can help your firm flourish. I want to leave you with one thought. Most owners tell me, we know our recruiters need training, but we struggle with the time, the structure, and the accountability. The reality is, without consistent training, most recruiters simply repeat the same habits year after year. Some are good habits, some are maybe not so good, that limit their success. The firms that consistently outperform their competitors have one thing in common. They provide structured training, structured, updated training, because they realize how fast the marketplace is training. And we actually have a top producer tutor that was built to solve this exact problem. And the results are just a higher revenue per recruiter, a much stronger team. And also, the firms that are developing their teams are now the ones that are going to dominate the markets over the next few years. And by the way, all the studies that I've seen from economists, we're going to have a great time between now and 2035. Now is the time for you to really think about scaling your business, and really growing. And there are systems and tools for sustainable growth. And when you look at what do these flourishing firms do, they provide 3 things: current content constantly, built-in reinforcement, and leadership visibility. These are 3 cornerstones of all these flourishing firms. They're constantly looking at what is currently going on. They have no problem with change whatsoever. And then they build in, if they're going to ask somebody to change something, they reinforce it. They're going to ask about it. They're going to monitor it. They're going to give feedback on it. And then leadership is going to do the exact same thing they're asking you to do. You need that leadership visibility to make sure these changes are happening. The difference between firms that are struggling and firms isn't consistent growth, usually isn't the market, it's the skills of the recruiter. And I can tell you, sometimes when I go to train at a conference, I just got back from a conference 2 days ago, and the questions these people were asking me, I was just shocked that they were such basic questions that they didn't know the answers to. And yet some of them have been recruiting 2 years and were asking me very fundamental questions. And now I want to give you share a story with you. Last year, I worked with a recruiting firm that had a very talented team, and their owner called me, and he told me something that really struck a chord with me. He said, my recruiters are working hard, but I feel like we're leaving a lot of money on the table. He goes, we're not producing near what we should be producing. So what I asked him to do is I said, okay, let me look at your processes. And what's funny is we realized that the problem was not effort. Those recruiters were working long hours. They were doing their best. But the issue that I discovered was they had never been giving structured training on where to put their efforts, on what were the critical skills that they needed to master. So it's not, hard work doesn't guarantee success. A lack of hard work guarantees failure, but hard work doesn't guarantee success. You've got to know where to put your time, where to put your efforts. Once we introduced consistent training and coaching, something interesting happened. The conversations with their clients improved. People weren't answering phones. They landed 19 clients in the first 6 months of implementing the new training. It was interesting also, they didn't get referrals. Their referrals were under 5. They didn't have any client referral program, and less than 5% of their candidates were referred. And within 6 months, 20% of their candidates came from referrals, and they landed 19 new clients. And the recruiters were much more confident when they were speaking with candidates, because again, if they were talking about what was important to each person, and over time, obviously the numbers of their placements and fills began to increase. Every month they just produced more. And so what the owner said to me was, he said, it was so interesting, Barb. I feel now, because in fact, I just talked to him last week because I'm doing some consulting with him. And he said, what's funny is I think my recruiters worked harder in the first 3 months of last year than they did in the last 9 months of last year. But, the last 2 quarters, they were just knocking it out of the park because they knew what to do. What changed wasn't the market, it was the skills of the recruiter. And that's exactly why I created the Top Producer Tutor program, because it can give your recruiting team a structured way to consistently improve the skills that actually drive results. And so often, I mean, you can do a lot of things in our profession that don't provide results. And what I want to do now, I want you to hang in with me. I'm going to show you, this is my top producer tutor. I want to show it to you. And rather than logging in live, I've got screenshots to just show you what this does offer. Because I think once you realize what this is, you're going to realize what it could do for you. You know, what we do is, I say revenue aligned skill development. We broke the tutors down into 3 areas: contract, temporary, and direct hire, you know, sales and recruiting. And so when an owner logs in, this is the first thing they see. And these are the courses that drive revenue inside a staffing or recruiting firm. You know, what the owners love about this structure is that it aligns training with how money is actually generated in their firms. And you know, my whole theory with developing this training program was to help owners take training off their desk, but provide them with the best consistent current training plus live interaction with me for their people. This next screen shows you how you don't have to guess what to train next at. One of the biggest frustrations owners tell me all the time is, I don't know what to train next on. This eliminates the problem completely because each course is broken down into structured lessons that must be taken in order. So your team always knows what to take. You can see these green check marks. They did the first lesson was the impact of attitude, because attitude impacts everything. The second one was make it big in contract staffing, the new business model, terminology. The lesson they're going to do next is pre-close and closing candidates. So they know what to do next. And each lesson is about 12 minutes. Some of the first couple are a little bit longer. So recruiters are basically learning a concept every day without disrupting their production schedule. We don't want training to take away from production. And everything is video. I went in a studio and did everything by video, but if somebody prefers reading, we also have a full transcript of all of this training. This format is called micro learning, and research has shown it dramatically improves retention. When you micro train people, you give them a whole day of training, they're going to retain less than 5% of it. And again, this is the weekly execution structure. Learning something is one thing, but implementing it is another. Okay, that's why the tutor programs includes live reinforcement training every week. And these are the classes I'm doing in March. Okay, you can see there's a lot. This is, if you own my tutor, yes, you've got the comprehensive training program that you're going to put your people through. They take it every day. They write down what they've learned. They get tested every 5th day. But I do live training every Wednesday at 11 Central Standard Time. And I do coaching calls every other Monday. So you can see your competitive edge is the call that we're going to do on March 25th. Where are my sales calls today, March 18th? A coaching call for everyone. We do one coaching call for everyone a month and one coaching call for only leadership every month. And the impact of your attitude was March 11th. This is just a sampling. And again, your people come in, they sign up for all these live calls. They can attend them live, or they're all recorded and they're put in a library. But I can tell you, it's really good for them to attend these calls live, because they hear other recruiters asking me questions, and often they're shocked by what they learn from other people that are on these calls. This is absolutely plug and play. If you invest in our tutor, you've got a comprehensive training program within 10 minutes after you invest. One of the things owners love about the system is it's so easy to implement. You know, you simply enter someone's email address, you select whether they're a manager or a team member, and the system sets them an invitation to enroll. That's the whole setup. It's truly plug and play for your entire team. It takes less than a minute for you to put an email address in and just give us their role, and then it shows them how to get into the system. Our tutors also change mindsets and behaviors of participants, like the certain critical skills we've weaved throughout the whole tutor comprehensive training, so that it's going to change their mindsets and change their behaviors. And I don't care if they're tenured. A lot of people buy the tutor to train their new people, and within a matter of 3 weeks, they have everybody on it because they realize their new people are sounding better than their tenured people. This is a resource library that has over 200 training webinars. Imagine the value of just this. Okay, every live training program that I do, articles that I'm writing, are all going into this library. So in addition to the lesson, every course comes with a full resource library. And this also includes forms and templates, training articles, recordings of all the coaching sessions, recordings of all the training webinars. This means your team isn't just learning concepts. They're getting tools and scripts they need to implement immediately. Say you've got them in the tutor, but you need to spot check. You need to, they're having counter offers all the time. They're offer turndowns. Then you go in the problem area folder and you have them watch some of the training on problem areas, and then they come back and tell you what they've learned. So you can spot train. It literally takes training off the desk of the owner or manager. And if your owner or manager is not listening to this recording, make sure you share this with them so they realize what this takes off of their desk. And I want to show you one example. Like if you clicked on, you see one of these folders is increased production and sales. So if I clicked on that folder, these are some of the things that are in that one folder. Sales-driven strategies to finish strong, active listening and relationship building, introduction to consultative selling and recruiting. Notice anything that I learn, I put in my tutor. Subtle shifts. How do you transform your desk with smart strategic tweaks? Crushing goals. This is just one sampling of some of the recordings that your people could listen to in the library. Many firms use these for their weekly training or reinforcement training. And so you've got this whole library filled with tons of information. And there is live reinforcement. Here's an example of a training session. For every session we provide, so if you're gonna sign somebody up for this, you can see this session was gonna do on March 6th, and it's accountability is key to growth. And it gives you a description of what the training is, and it gives you the key takeaways, and it gives you a handout. So you've got a registration link, a handout, and this is where the real training sessions are, where I work directly with members on real recruiting challenges. And by the way, when you own my tutor, I go out at the end of every month and say, what training do you want me to do live next month? What topics do you want me to cover? So you have input into what topics I actually cover, which is wonderful. Next are the coaching calls. We do coaching calls for, everybody, and then coaching calls for owner managers. And this is where I think the magic really happens. Members do nothing but ask me questions. And also they learn from questions being asked by other recruiting firms. Many owners tell me that their teams get tremendous value by hearing how other firms solve problems. Or they might think that maybe they're the top producer in your firm, and I get somebody on the line that says, Barb, I really wanted to do $1 million in direct hire this year. I'm only at 800,000. And people are going, what? It makes them think bigger, not just what your firm or your company is doing. And there's also an accountability component. After they're taking classes, you can see that they also have to take a test, and again, this is one test, what is the number one common denominator of high performing account executives? What is the answer? And the minute they take the test, they get their score, and they must achieve an 80% or they have to retake the test. And the reason we do this is it ensures they don't just watch the lesson. They've got to learn and retain the material, because if they don't pass, then they have to go back and take the test again. And you have access, you can see what they're doing, and that's, you just click on a screen. Here you see somebody's had 2 courses, they've completed 2, they've earned 2 certificates. You can see what courses they're in, and also you can see if they're passing. Like this person, here's their test scores. This person got an 86% on the first test, 95 on the second, and a 60 on the third. So guess what? They can't take the next lesson until they go back and pass that test. And that's the beauty of this tutor product. It is self-reliant. And by the way, if they've got a question on anything, they don't come to you and ask them questions. We have instant messaging. They can call my office. They can instant message us. If they've got a question on anything in this tutor, they come to us, not you. And so we not only sell this, okay, we back it and support it. And so I want to ask you a question. If every recruiter on your team improved just 1 or 2 key skills this year, how much input would that have on your sales and profits? Because that's exactly why firms invest in structured training. Small improvements in recruiting skills often produce very large improvements in results. I always tell experienced recruiters, if you just increase your stats by 10% across the board, 10% more of everything, your production will go up by 22%. And they're like, where are you getting that? It's because I've trained for 30 years. I can tell you those kind of numbers and show you exactly how to do that. And again, they have access to me 6 times a month with coaching calls, and they can ask me any questions they want. Now, why have so many firms decided to invest in our tutor program? Because it's stronger recruiter productivity, better client relationships, big time, more placements and fills. It dramatically increases sales and profits. 100% of our tutor clients have improved sales and profits, and they give a higher revenue per recruiter, and it improves retention of your internal team, because the people that work for you want to develop personally and professionally. They want to do that. And this once you own our tutor software, once you own our tutor, it costs you $50, a one-time cost of $50 to put one of your person into one of the courses in the tutor, and they have access to the live calls and the coaching calls as long as they work for you. Can you imagine just paying $50 to train a person for as long as they work for you, and they have live interaction with me weekly? And some weeks when we do coaching calls, they've got access to me twice a week, so I can help them improve for you. Now, what is the investment? I don't believe in hiding prices, because the normal price of a tutor is $18.97. During March, we're gonna discount this by 25%. I told about the March Madness basketball thing. We're going to do a March Madness thing with our tutor. That brings the investment down to roughly $1,400. Now, the first 10 companies that invest, we're also going to give you 10 free seats. Remember, I told you it costs $50 to put a person in one of the courses. We're going to also give you 10 free seats. So that is almost $1,000 discount. And I'm telling you, this pays for itself many times over, many times over. And so if any of you are interested, because this call is recorded, I'm going to give you a phone number that I want you to call, because we're not doing this call live. And again, we're going to keep that open for the first 10 people, because I'm going to be sending this recording out this afternoon. The firms that are flourishing right now aren't winging it. Many own our top producer tutors. I can tell you that some of the best firms in this country, I sell my tutor to franchisees all the time. And I always laugh at that, because they're paying a franchise fee. They're paying their franchisee to train them. And probably 25% of my clients are franchise owners, because they like my training better. I have one franchise that uses my tutor as their training program, and we've sold the tutor to people that are, mom and pop, right up through firms that are, multi-million-dollar corporations with locations all over the world. And the reason they provide our training for their people, or the lessons are clear. It's a step-by-step process. There's live weekly training where they can interact with me. There's live coaching where they can ask me anything. And accountability is built in. You can see if they're writing notes. You can see what they're doing on their tests, and they've got tools that they can implement immediately. So imagine this, that if you invested in the tutor, and starting tomorrow, your people could be in lesson 1, have access to all the libraries, and they could actually sit on a live call with me tomorrow. That's how easy it is to get in here. The firms that consistently outperform their competition are not the firms with the best markets. They're the firms with the best trained recruiters, period. And I'm finding that there's a real lack of training out there right now. And so often the person doing the training has not kept up, and they're training on things that don't even work anymore. So this is a one-time offer. It's only for the month of March. You can get 25% off for 10 free licenses. And the way to do it is this. You can either click on that QR code and set up, a meeting to discuss this. Or if you want to be one of the first 10 to invest, I would suggest that you call one of those phone numbers. Either call Jody at that first line, or call our office on the second line. And if you're not sure which tutor will help you, explain what you're trying to achieve. These are all customized to what you're trying to achieve as an owner. And so if you talk to Jody worked for me. Jody was one of my top producers. And I flipped her over to the training company, because it drove her nuts when she would listen to people that were working for my training company. They never worked a desk. And she's like, you need someone who's worked a desk and been a top producer to talk to these owners. And she goes, because I was raised on the tutor. So Jody's whole experience, I mean, she was raised on the tutor. And so that's why she can answer any questions, and she can really help you key in on what you need to do. The worst decision you can make is not at least talking to her, because I am telling you that this is a life-changing moment for you. And I gave you some action items, and you can try to implement those action items. But how about having me to mentor and coach your people and encourage them to be making constant changes to improve, not only the way they're working their desk, but to improve their quality of life and their income, which of course impacts your sales and profits. So I do encourage all of you to, please call one of those numbers or click on that QR code. And I would love nothing more than to mentor and coach your people. And with my track record, I know that what I teach works. There is not a doubt in my mind that if you entrust the training for your team to me, that you will see a difference. And you're going to realize the investment is such a small percentage of the increased sales that you're going to enjoy. So I do thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you got a lot out of the session. I hope that you realize that this tutor is a turnkey comprehensive training program that can be in your office as of tomorrow if you make the decision. And I would love to hear from you if you have any questions, or if you want to talk to me personally. You can also call my office and ask to talk to me personally. I would be more than glad to take any of your calls as well. But Jody is the next best thing to talking to me, believe me. So I hope to mentor and coach all of you. I hope you enjoyed our call, and I wish you all continued success. Thanks so much for joining me.